Welcome to the Prospective Doctor Podcast, where we will provide essential information for pre-medical students and those already in medical school. Listen each week for tips on how to improve your application and gain an acceptance to medical school.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Dr. Marinelli. I am the Director of Advising with Med School Coach. Today I wanted to take you through a step-by-step guide to the AMCAS application. So if you haven't started already, those of you that are applying to medical school this year will be completing the American Medical College Application Service, or AMCAS, application to apply to allopathic schools. It's quite an exhaustive application, and every year I get tons of questions from different applicants asking about the process, what to enter, how to go through certain sections. So I wanted to go through the application step by step. I'm going to provide most of the basics for the application and how to complete it. However, the AMC provides a great instruction manual, which pretty much can answer every single question. The link to that will be in the description. So please feel free to download that as a guide to this podcast and a guide to accompany you as you complete the AMCAS application. So first, what you have to do is create an AMC login. If you've already taken the MCAT, then you should already have an AMC login, and that will work for the AMCAS application server. You just go in and log in and then select a new application if you're applying this year and you haven't done so already. When you open up the application server, you get something called the dashboard, which kind of gives you an overview of the application process, what you need to complete, what has been completed, and also the status of your application, if you have submitted it or not, if it's being processed or verified, or if it has been verified. So let's start with the first section of the AMCAS. This is identifying information. This is pretty straightforward. As you go through it, it's going just to ask your demographical information, your legal name, your preferred name. If you have another name that you prefer to be called, maybe you go by your middle name. Any alternate names. So perhaps your legal name now is your married name, but perhaps you had a different last name prior to that. They ask for ID numbers. So if you have an ID number that's associated with your transcript from your school, you can enter that here. Not everybody's going to have this, so don't feel the need to enter it. But if you do have an ID number at your school, you can enter it there. Your birth and sex and how you identify with your gender. And then where you were born, what country, what county, what state, and what city. Pretty straightforward on this demographical information. So let's go to the schools attended. So first you start with high school. That should be pretty easy. Colleges can be a little bit more tricky, and some people ask a lot of questions about which colleges do I need to include here and which colleges do I need to get transcripts from. And the question is basically any college you have ever taken a course from, whether or not it was in high school, whether or not it was a community college course that you took while at university, even if that credit never transferred over to your degree or to your university, you still need to include the college and still need to request a transcript from them. There are very few exceptions where you do not need to enter the college or request a transcript. And again, this you can refer to the AMC manual. But in general, if you've taken any courses here in the United States, you need to put those in and then request a transcript. At each college, it will take you through a number of questions, the dates you attended, if you declared a major or a minor there, and then it will generate a transcript request form. So this is a really important part. After you've entered all the information of your college, then you have an option and it says create transcript request form. You open this up, make sure you put the correct address of the school on the transcript request form, and then you create it. It allows you to print this and send this to the registrar's office at your school. When you're looking at this transcript request form, again, make sure the address is correct, make sure your name, date of birth is correct, and also if you have any of those ID numbers that we talked about, make sure that ID number is on the transcript request form as well. It's important to follow the instructions on the transcript request form and then also the individual instructions from your specific registrar's office. For instance, a lot of schools use the National Student Clearinghouse to process transcripts. You still need to go through the process of requesting a transcript from them. And then there's an option to upload documents. And that's where you can upload or email the AMCAS request form to be submitted along with your official transcript. So make sure that you're looking at the AMC transcript request form. Make sure you're following all the instructions here, and then also following the instructions from your individual school's registrar's office. This is very important. Try to get this done as early as possible so that your transcripts get sent into AMCAS and that it doesn't delay any processing time. The next question is previous matriculation at any medical school. Pretty straight answer. And finally, on the schools attended page is institutional action. So you can read more about institutional action in the instruction manual, but basically it's important to be honest as possible with this type of question. If you ever received institutional action, whether or not it's expunged from your academic record, you still need to answer yes to this question. So make sure you're honest and open about it. Use the space. When you do click yes, a box opens up and you're allowed 1,325 characters to discuss the institutional action. So make sure you're open and honest about it and disclose any institutional action that may have occurred, even if it's not on your transcript. So let's go to the next section, biographical information. Again, this is just information about you, where you grew up, your address, and those types of things. It's pretty straightforward, again, and we'll just kind of briefly go through it. So your preferred address and your permanent address, make sure this is accurate. Make sure that you're going to have this preferred address where you're going to be able to receive mail. If you put a preferred address that maybe you're moving from, or maybe it's like a parent's address that you're not readily going to get mail, that can be very bad. A lot of medical schools use snail mail for correspondence. So make sure you put an accurate preferred address so that you do receive mail. Permanent address, this could probably be your parents' home or somewhere that you are living currently. If you have an alternate contact, if you want to put somebody else that can be contacted as a proxy for you for AMCAS, you can put that. Definitely not necessary. Citizenship is pretty straightforward. The next part is legal residence. So I get a lot of questions about what state people are a legal resident of. If they were born in California and their parents live in California and that's where their driver's license is and they're registered to vote in California, but they go to school in Texas, let's say, where should they put their legal residence? Well, it's usually going to be your state of origin, where you came from and where you're registered to vote, or where you have your driver's license or things like that. So usually you will not identify with the state that you're attending colleges. You're going to go to that permanent resident state, which would be your home state more often than not. Self-identification is next. That's what ethnicity you identify with. If you don't want to put anything here, you do not need to, but you can put your ethnicity if you'd like to. Languages, this is again pretty self-explanatory. You just add which language you speak. If you speak multiple languages, you just mark what is your proficiency in that language and how often you used it. Childhood information. This is kind of a little bit where you grew up and a little bit about the members of your family. So I've had a couple questions here. People have asked me, where should I put that I grew up if I moved around a lot? Just try to estimate where you spent the most amount of time. If you have moved around a lot, just enter the county and the city where you lived for the most time. There are other questions regarding the people in your household and some overall family income and how you pay for your secondary education, things like that. That will be answered specifically to you. Try to answer these to the best of your ability. Sometimes I recommend, if you don't know the answer, just ask your parents and get some more information. But usually these are just estimations to the best of your ability. Next is if you served in the military, very specific questions there. If you've ever been discharged from the military. So after the military, there are felony or misdemeanor statements. If you've ever been convicted or pled guilty or no contest to a felony or to a misdemeanor, you need to list it here. So again, read the instructions very closely. Make sure to disclose the offense if you ever had an offense. It's definitely better to be open and honest up front rather than medical schools finding out about something like this later on. Disadvantage status. This is completely up to you. And if you choose to identify as disadvantaged, it does give you some definitions of disadvantage. And if you click yes, then you're given another about 1,300 characters to talk about why you feel you're disadvantaged. Add in your parents and guardians, your siblings, and if you have any dependents. And finally, that biographical information section is over. Next section is coursework. Coursework is definitely a time-consuming section, and you want to make sure that you take your time on here and be very meticulous when entering the courses. You have to enter every course that you've ever taken that is at the college level or university level, and also AP courses. So even if you took a college level course in high school, you have to enter that here. So what I recommend doing is printing out a transcript from all of the colleges that you've ever taken courses out and just go one by one and enter those courses exactly how they appear on the transcript. So if you click add course, a window pops up. It has you select the academic year, the term, what year you were in school, the course number, the course name, and the course classification. So enter the course number and course name exactly how it appears on your transcript. For the course classification, you choose the classification based on the content of the course. So let's say you were in a biopsych course. If it was heavily biology, then click biology. But if it was more heavily psychology, then you can click otherwise. For instance, behavioral and social sciences. I do recommend if you have some of these courses that were interdisciplinary, like biopsych, if you got a good grade in them, try to classify it in the science realm so that your science GPA gets as high as possible. But again, it's definitely important just to be honest. If you took biopsych and it was definitely weighted psychology heavy, then don't click biology. Be honest here and classify the course according to the description. You also enter the credit hours and the transcript grade, and then answer some questions if there was a lab, and then if there was any type of special courses, like if this was AP credit, honors, if you repeated it, or things like this. It's so important to enter this information as accurately as possible and exactly how it appears on your transcript. Otherwise, this can really delay your application. And as AMCAS goes through and verifies your application, they're going to match this up to your transcripts, and any discrepancies that they see, they'll mark it. And medical schools like to see that the marks are minimal, that there's not a ton of corrections made by AMCAS. So do the best you can here and definitely take your time and carefully enter all of your different courses. The next section is work and activities. A lot of you have already prepared your work and activities before putting it in AMCAS, so we'll just go through briefly what is required when you put it in AMCAS. First, you need to classify your experience type. This is pretty straightforward, so if it was shadowing, put it under physician shadowing. If it was research, put it under research or lab. There are some crossovers between different experiences. Like, for instance, maybe community service volunteer is also a leadership experience that you had. The classification of experience type is completely up to you and how you choose to classify it. But I do recommend trying to make your experiences as well-rounded as possible. So for instance, let's say you have 4 different community service/volunteer activities and no leadership activities. If one of those volunteer activities could be classified as a leadership activity, then you should probably mark it as such so that it appears that you've had various different experience types. You enter a name for the experience. This is completely up to you, but it should be a small description of what it was. Volunteer at Soup Kitchen, volunteer at San Diego Hospital. So whatever the experience name is, put the start date and end date to the best of your ability. that just asks for the month and the year, and then also the total hours. So this is your best estimation. Most people haven't kept track of every single hour they've spent in every activity, but try to estimate this to the best of your ability. Repeated means if you maybe stopped and started this activity at some point. This will probably not apply to most activities, but if you do click yes, then it opens some more windows where you have to select different start and end dates. Then there's also the contact information. The required information is a contact title, first and last name, phone number, and email address. Try to put as much contact information as possible and make it as accurate as possible. A lot of people get worried about this, like, oh, maybe the contact for a volunteer organization that they were at left and someone else is replaced. You can put that new replacement there. You can put a phone or an email address, so you don't need both. Very, very rarely does AMCAS ever contact any of these individuals. I could imagine that they would contact if they see a discrepancy somewhere in your application and they need to clarify it, but very rarely has any of these individuals been contacted. But it is important to try to make sure you put as accurate information as possible. Finally is the experience description, where you're allowed 700 characters to talk about what you did in that experience. And then AMCAS allows you to mark 3 of your experiences as the most meaningful experiences. And when you click yes for that, you get another box that opens with about 1,300 characters where you can expand on that experience and talk about why it was so significant to you. The next section is letters evaluation. So this is where you can have your letter writers get their letters uploaded. So there's a couple different ways to do this. You can put in the letter writer and their information. You put in a title, and it can generate a letter request form, which you can send directly to the letter writer, and they will send it via AMCAS. You can also get letters from Interfolio or virtual evals uploaded here. Basically, you want to just try to get all of your letters of recommendation uploaded to your AMCAS application as soon as possible. You can definitely still submit your AMCAS application without your letters evaluation, but in order for it to be complete at medical schools, you're going to need your letters of recommendation in your application. The next section is medical schools, and this is where you're going to actually add your school list. So you can search by state, or you can search by the deadline or by the program type. And then you can select which schools you're going to apply to. Once you do that, it does populate some information about the schools, if they participate in the letters of evaluation program that AMCAS offers, what the program type is, what the deadline is, what the transcript deadline is. So all of these different things. Each school that you add is going to cost $30. So take that into account as you're adding the schools. You can submit your application to just one school and then add schools later on in the application cycle if you'd like to. How to select medical schools to apply to is really a whole different conversation, and we can definitely cover that in another podcast, or feel free to read our blogs on perspectivedoctor.com or ask us any questions at medschoolcoach.com on how to select schools. We're almost through the application. The next section is the essays section, and this is the personal statement. Again, most people have probably prepared the personal statement like they prepared their activities before they logged on to the AMCAS application. And we do have a separate podcast about the personal statement. So please visit that podcast as well to learn more. If you apply to MD, PhD programs, you'll have additional essays that you need to enter in this section of the application. Finally, the last section of the application is standardized tests. If you've taken your MCAT, the MCAT score will show up on there already. You do not need to enter the information on your own. If you have an upcoming MCAT test date, you enter it on the application so medical schools know if you are intending to take another test. And then finally, if you have other tests that are applicable, like a GRE or something like that, you can also enter that, but it's definitely not required. The MCAT is what is required. After you go through the standardized test information, and you've completed everything, make sure you completely review your application as thoroughly as possible. You can actually open your application as a PDF and view it the way that medical schools will be viewing it. So you can click print application, and this is a PDF view of it. And make sure you go through the entire application and read it word for word and look at all of the different punctuations, capitalizations, spelling. Make sure everything is correct. It can be viewed very poorly if, for instance, you didn't capitalize San Diego when you entered your county. Even small mistakes like that could be viewed negatively by admissions committees. So make sure you go through this very carefully. If you've copied and pasted your activities or your personal statement into the AMCAS application, make sure you review those very carefully. Look for formatting errors because that can commonly occur when you do enter that information. Hopefully this sheds some light on the AMCAS application process. We'd be happy to help you through the entire process and looking over your application and helping you write those work and activities and personal statement. So if you need any help at all, definitely hit us up at www.medschoolcoach.com and check out our blogs and our other resources available at perspectivedoctor.com as you go through this process of completing your AMCAS application. Good luck to everyone. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.
Our mission is to inspire, encourage, and inform students as you journey through a rigorous and intricate process of achieving your dreams in medicine. Visit us at perspectivedoctor.com for more essential resources in your medical school journey.